This is an OctoMiner case, and today I'm taking a look at not one, not two, but all three available versions. Let's find out if you should get one. Before we dig deeper into these cases, I want to give a big thanks to our friends at OctoMiner for sending us this 12X Ultra case for review. All opinions are my own, and OctoMiner did not get to preview this video, so they're seeing it for the first time just as you are. I did, however, buy this 8X Ultra, and this 8X Ultra Plus was sent over by another content creator. For those that don't know, OctoMiner is a designer and manufacturer of GPU mining enclosures. They specialize in riserless server-style cases and normally do sales on a bulk scale. They sell to the public as well, however, they do require a 5 to 10 minimum quantity order depending on which variant you want. But they did tell me they will offer no minimum purchase opportunities roughly once a quarter. Since I'm reviewing all three versions, I'll first go over what they have in common, then what sets them apart. Starting on the outside, they're made of 1.2mm cold-rolled steel with rust-resistant zinc coating. They come with anodized aluminum handles on either side. They're not quite red, but more like a...
How do I put this? It's a little, pink. Yeah, definitely pink.
Looking at the front, they have an LED cluster and 3 unlabeled buttons that may or may not activate a self-destruct by pressing them in the wrong order. Like, really, dude? There's a silk-screened logo on the front right there, inches away, but you couldn't label the buttons? Near the LEDs and buttons, there's a Bosch environmental sensor that measures intake temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure, in case you needed to know when it's about to rain. There's also a VGA output and USB that provides ease of access for diagnostics and testing in a server room environment. Below that, you'll find an OLED display configurable to show information such as hash rate, IP address, power consumption, and more. Finally, you'll find a slot for a standard 2.5-inch SSD. This drive bay is not hot swap, so you'll need to connect the wires inside the case as you install the drive. The power supplies, however, are hot swappable and use HP's common slot standard. Here you'll find another sensor to read exhaust temperatures on the rear of the chassis. Each system is equipped with a smart hardware watchdog and fan controller that can be set in HiveOS to maintain optimal temperature range. There's also a microcontroller that allegedly detects if the rig has frozen and automatically reboots it. In my experience, it's decent at recovering a frozen state, however, sometimes in-person reset is still required. Due to the restriction on international shipping of lithium batteries, it doesn't come with one installed. You don't need one to use the case, but if you were to have a power failure, all your custom BIOS settings would be reset. It's a standard CR2032 motherboard battery you can find almost anywhere. We went over what most of these cases have in common, but now let's talk about their differences. The X8 Ultra and X8 Ultra Plus both have B85 based slot-style motherboards that go right in the middle between cards 4 and 5. The CPU is a dual-core Intel G1840. These are standard 4th Gen 1150 sockets, so an upgrade is possible. The GPU slot spacing is 65mm. This supposedly allows for full triple slot cards. However, in my testing, anything higher wattage past 2.5 slots seems to choke the cards. More on that later in the video. The X8 Ultra is equipped with 4GB of DDR3 SODIMM memory and a 30GB SSD, as well as two 1200-watt HP server power supplies. That provides a total of 2400 watts. It's important to note that this number is specific to running on 240 volts. When operating on 120 volts, the power supplies are derated to 900 watts each. It has four 120mm by 38mm fans running at 4,800 RPM. It's thicker than the standard 25mm PC fan and definitely louder, but boy, it does push a ton of air. The breakout board has 9 6-pin PCIe connections and comes equipped with 8 6-pin to dual 6+2-pin PCIe cables of exact length for each GPU. The PCIe cables are 18 gauge, but a 16 gauge option is available. The X8's handles come pre-installed and are the same lovely. I have been told by official OctoMiner representatives that this variant will no longer be manufactured. When all stock is sold, the 8X Ultra Plus will be taking its place in the OctoMiner lineup. The X8 Ultra Plus takes the foundation of the X8 Ultra and builds upon it with some upgrades. It has 140mm fans rather than the 120. These upgraded fans definitely help with airflow while not being any louder. Power delivery is also different. The power supply's backplane and cage have been upgraded to accept up to 4 power supplies, and it comes equipped with 4 750-watt hallway server power supplies. Unlike the 1200-watt HP server power supplies, these do not derate when using 120 volts. The breakout board has 24 6-pin PCIe connections. Of the 24, 21 are populated so you can add up to 3 more PCIe cables. The 21 cables consist of 8 dual 6+2 pin PCIe and 8 single PCIe. This makes for 3 8-pin PCIe connections per GPU. The remaining 5 are to power the motherboard GPU backplane. Lastly, RAM and storage have been upgraded to 8GB of DDR3 memory and a 60GB SSD, both welcome upgrades. The 8GB of RAM can definitely help with mining operations of the OS. And now we have this big boy. This baby can slot up to 12 GPUs and is very different from both the X8 cases. It comes with a B250 motherboard that is located underneath the 3 power supply cage. It's running a dual-core Intel Celeron G3900, 8GB of memory, and a 60GB SSD is slotted under the display on the left side of the case. The slot spacing is 60.96mm. This allegedly allows up to a triple slot card. However, in my testing, a 2.5 slot card is pushing it, and a 2 slot card is ideal. The motherboard has 2 GPU slots directly on it, while the 10 GPU backplane has a direct hard connection to it. This means they cannot move independently of each other. The X12 utilizes the same 1200-watt power supplies from the X8 Ultra, but it fits 3 instead of 2. It can output up to 3,600 watts on 240 volts and 2,700 watts on 120 volts. The breakout board has a total of 26-pin PCIe connections. 4 are used for the 10 GPU backplane and 2 are used for the motherboard. Another seems to be used elsewhere in the system. There are a total of 12 6-pin PCIe to dual 6+2 pin PCIe cables, allowing for 2 8-pin PCIe connections per GPU. It has the same 140mm fans mentioned in the previous X8 Ultra Plus, but uses 5 of them instead of 4 of them. The 12X also includes a power splitter. It's a C19 to 3 C13s. I still prefer using 3 single C13s directly to the PDU. I decided to do some testing with the server power supplies to see what variations were possible. In the first test, I made a scenario where you have some 240 volt capacity, but not enough to power the full rig. I powered one power supply with 240 volts and another with 120 volts. The machine ran just fine with no issues and even correctly reported in HiveOS. In the next test, I made a scenario where you don't have 240 volt available, but you have 3 separate 120 volt circuits, and again, no issues. Next, we have 3 different wattage PSUs, a 750, 1200, and the less common 1500 watt, all running on 240 volts. The machine pulled from each PSU a ratio based on each PSU's total wattage rating, in line with the demand, so you can in fact use mixed wattages in this OctoMiner. Last scenario is mixed PSUs and mixed power. I ran 1200 watts on 240 and 750 watts on 120 volts. The machine pulled a ratio of each PSU's rated wattage, no issues, so you can in fact run mixed power and mixed wattages on this OctoMiner. Of course, this may be something that always has been. However, I'm fairly new to server power supplies, so let me know in the comments below if you already do something like this, or if there's any issues with running mixed wattages and/or mixed voltages. One more thing about power. I did notice the total power draw was different depending on how things were run. It seems running high voltage yields about 2% better efficiency, since I saved nearly 40 watts on 240 volts using 3 1200 watt power supplies versus running on 120 volts. Anyone building a mining rig should be conscious of how much they're spending on hardware. TLDR, in the bear market, this would not be a good value. However, in the current market, I'd say it's a fair price. If we consider form factor, labor, and uniformity, then the OctoMiner may be one of the best deals you can get. Imagine building more than one 8 GPU VETA frame and all the components that go with it. Or you can pay $900 and have it all ready to go in one box. Alright, so the fans are going at full tilt, but it's kind of loud. So who is this OctoMiner for? As you can hear, this thing is loud. You wouldn't want to have this in your living room. Using 120 volt power, I made 2 scenarios using my 1 gigahash mining rig that pulls 2,700 to 2,800 watts. We'll be using 8 EVGA for the Win 3 Ultra 3090 graphics cards. Each pulls about 300 to 310 watts, producing 125 to 127 megahash each. Using the OctoMiner X8 Ultra Plus case, I installed all 8 cards and ran 4 independent 120 volt circuits to each power supply. I set the GPU fans to target 55C on the core and the case fans to target 60C on the core. The ambient temperature was around 68 degrees Fahrenheit for this testing. After mining for about 1 hour, the case fans were running at 90% and the cards were running at 100%. This was significantly louder than my VETA frame build. The cards only had about 9 millimeters of space between them, and in my experience, they needed about a minimum of 13 millimeters to have adequate airflow in a server-style case. 3090 for the Win 3s are just too big and too hot. If you have lower wattage 2-slot or 2.5 slot cards, this case will be just fine. As for my 1 gigahash rig, I'll be sticking with the open air frame since it produces less noise. The X12 has a slot spacing of 60.69 millimeters, which is exactly 3 slots. Installing a 3090 EVGA for the Win 3 Ultra is totally out of the question since they only have about 5 millimeters of space between them. This will get way too hot and way too loud, and the 12 3090s would exceed its power limits anyway. So for the X12 case, you would want to stick with 2-slot cards. Now, up to this point, I've been mostly objective, other than the lack of labels on the buttons, the pink handles, and memorizing LED. Okay, I guess I haven't been objective. However, my experience hasn't been perfect. I'm going to go through the issues I found reviewing and using all 3 cases over the period of 2 weeks. I also contacted OctoMiner and their support team, and they got back to me within 1 business day. Full disclosure, I contacted OctoMiner on an alternate account through their customer support email on their website, so initially they did not know who I was till about halfway through the process after they approved my RMA. I am very conscious of the fact that even though I'm a small YouTuber, I could be getting an experience that is not that what my viewers would get. So I took steps to ensure the experience of an average Joe instead of one of the influencers they shipped a free case to. My OctoMiner X8 Ultra came with a dead fan out of the box. Additionally, I paid extra for the optional 16 gauge cables, but received the 18 gauge cables instead. When I pointed out the dead on arrival fan and the mistake in the type of cables I received, they promptly responded and approved my RMA. I'll be getting the replacement parts 3 weeks after my RMA was approved. However, they are setting up a US-based parts warehouse to expedite the process in the future. Regarding the X12 Ultra, a few things with this case were kinda off. The first thing was the backplane for the 10 GPUs was mounted so close to the back of the case, the PCI slot and the GPU did not line up. So I had to unscrew the 10 GPU backplane and pull it toward the front of the case as much as possible, but this revealed another issue. On the X12 case, the motherboard is mounted under the PSU cage and is hard connected to the 10-slot GPU backplane. So I had to remove the PSU cage in order to access the motherboard screws. So I unscrewed the PSU cage, unscrewed the motherboard, and moved it and the backplane at the same time toward the front of the case as much as I can. Then, while applying firm pressure, I screwed everything back down. I also slightly bent and pushed the PCIe wall on the back of the case to make as much room as possible. At this point, I still needed to apply pressure, but I was able to get the GPUs in. Of course, only time will tell if they will actually fix these issues and improve their quality control. So, should you buy one? The OctoMiner case is great for its design purpose. It's designed to work on 240 volts in a well-ventilated area where noise won't be an issue. This is ideal for commercial applications and large-scale deployments, thanks to its uniformity. However, as a home mining rig, it can still be a great fit. If you catch them on promotion, you can avoid minimum order limits and purchase only one. For reference, shipping took about 30 days for me. I think it's a well-made machine and you can't beat the convenience and compact design. For my situation, I'll be using the X12 and combining a lot of mismatched rigs into one. This will allow me to save on HiveOS fees, and it's nice to have everything in one machine. So let me know what your thoughts are and any questions you may have down below in the comments. If you're looking to get in touch with me or looking for an awesome Discord, check out our community Discord, link down there as well. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.